I'm Shenae.
And I'm Nita.
And today we're pulling things apart and putting them back together. Thank you for watching. So like I mentioned earlier, we are pulling things apart and putting them back together. So here in front of us we have the Hayate pole saw. We're going to explain to you how to pull it apart and how to put it back together and all the bits and pieces that you may need. And
this is across the board with all the silky poles. So it doesn't matter if you have a Hayate like this one, or a Hayachi, the black one, or the red one, the Forester, or the yellow Longboy. Same principle, same kind of designs, like tweaks and size and whatnot, but the concept is the same.
Yes. And when you purchase one of these incredible pole saws, more often than not, especially if you're going to get big 7.7, a lot of the freight companies, they don't carry such large large lengths in box sizes.
That's right, it's too long.
Yes, so more often than not we pull them apart and then you can put it back together. So today we're going to explain to you how to put this pole saw back together if it's come split in two.
That's right. So first thing we're going to do is pull them apart. Now the same principle will be if you damage one of your pole sections. You're going to want to pull that section out and then purchase a new section and pop it back together. So this will be handy for that situation as well. So not only if you receive it in two parts, but if you need to pull it apart, this is what you do. So these levers here, you've just seen me open, what they do is there's a black bit of plastic under there, and Shenae has kindly got one earlier for us, which is this spacer here. Now what this spacer does is when you close this lever here, it actually squashes this against the pole and holds it really tight. So that's one of the locking systems, is this spacer. But when we pull the poles apart, this spacer is naturally going to want to fall into the pole because there's no longer a pole holding it in place. So you can see here, this is its maximum extension. That button has popped through, so it won't allow it out. But to get this pole out, all you have to do, press the button down, and it's like a circle, half circle sort of thing. So you don't have to press it all the way into the pole, which Shenae did one day. It wasn't such a good idea, and it slid and chomped a chunk of her skin off. Yes. So don't do that. Just press it ever so slightly down, and the roundness of the corners will fall themselves under the pole, and pull it all the way out. So now, if we lay this down, we have two poles here inside each other. And then we have two poles here inside each other. So if, as Shenae mentioned, you get a 7.7 in the post or, couriered from us, most likely it will come like this. So that's great if you just want like 3 meters, but if you want it back to a 7.7 meter pole, we need to put them back together. Yes.
So the trick to this one is to unlock these levers here and to face the levers down to the ground.
Yep.
Alright, so you can see here, I'll do a photo close up, that the black spaces, the gravity has taken it and it's pulling it down. So you've got a nice clean surface and flat surface that's going throughout the pole.
If we turn it the other way, you can show them.
Yeah, if you turn it the other way just here, you can see that the black spacer is slightly popping out, which makes it a little bit more difficult to squeeze your pole through it to slide all the way to complete.
Yeah. So that probably seems completely logical to you, and you think, why did they make a video on this? But for some people, it just doesn't cross their mind, and we may have been guilty once or twice in the beginning of doing that ourselves, so hence the video. So, levers to the ground if we're putting poles back together. Obviously, the pole you're sliding in, make sure you don't take out any printing ornaments, and also make sure it's also the right way, because obviously there is an up and down for the poles too.
And you can easily do this with one person too.
Yes, yeah, we have two, so we're taking advantage of it.
Yep.
So you can sort of see when I put that in, I actually wriggled it a little bit, like exaggerating here, a little bit like that. I just find that easier personally to get in, so I just put the bottom bit in, lever the top in, wriggle it, and then just sort of slightly up and down as it goes in.
Yep. And you can see that the stopper button just here is stopping it from sliding into the poles a little bit further. Easy, simple fix. Pop that button through, let it slide.
That's right. So again, just until it's at the same level as the pole, it'll automatically slide under. It will slide in, and again, it's stopped. And that means it's hopped itself into the little hole here. So the easiest way to do it is to extend. So don't try and push it through. That's just going to be a pain to do. So extend it here, and your button, you'll find it easier then to move through the pole.
Yeah.
And take it all the way through. So a bit like when we suggest when you put your pole saw up, lock the lever down so you just have the one part you're working on moving rather than all 4 poles sliding in and out of themselves. So lock that down, press this initial pin underneath like we said before, wriggle it till it pops through. Now open your lever up on your last pole, slide it down, press the button again until it locks into place, then close all your levers and you are good to go, or in this case store.
So it only takes a couple of minutes just to do so, and it's so simple and so easy. So it's great if you were transporting it yourself to a friend's backyard.
In saying that, the 7.7s are pretty amazing. If you just put it from the back seat across to the passenger seat in the front of the car, you can get it in some tiny vehicles. So yeah, it transports fairly well, but in a courier situation, definitely we need to make it a little bit smaller. But next we thought we would show you, if you wanted to replace one of those yellow plastic, we call them clamp housing sets. Now, a normal home gardener, it's probably not going to be something you'll ever have to do, but arborists, they often do.
They often have to replace some sort of part on the pole, and the good thing about it, it only costs a couple of dollars to do so you don't have to buy a whole new pole. We're going to explain to you how it's done.
And sometimes it's actually only this little bit of black plastic that needs replacing. Like Shenae said, you'd be looking at $1 or $2 maybe. So well worth replacing these, because those, I mentioned before, locking systems. So Silkies have a double locking system. They have the clamp, which squeezes it, holds it tight. Then they have the button that holds it in place. Now, if one of those aren't working properly, you've got a high chance of damaging your pole. And the pole is not $2 to replace. So that's something you want to look after. So sometimes a little bit of TLC replacing these little parts will make your pole saw last so much longer. But how do we do that?
So we're going to remove the pole that we want to change the clamp housing on. So unlock the levers, and we are going to use this handle.
Alright, so now we've got our pole section that we want to replace our clamp housing on. Probably the simplest way, particularly if you're on your own, is get a workbench with a vise. That's definitely the simplest. So open your vise up and pop it in the vise. So that way it doesn't move. However, if you don't have a vise, that's not a problem. You can still do it just on the ground or on a workbench or whatever. Get yourself something narrow, thin like this. This is a spear rod that actually goes in this clamp housing, but you could use a nail or even a bit of screw. We've been guilty of using a pen from time to time. Be a good one though, because they do break if you don't. But anyway, the point is, you want something that's going to fit through the hole at the top here. So just position it on the other little bit of silver you can see, and then get a hammer and just tap it in.
And you will see that it will pop out, the pen that was inside will pop out the other side.
Yeah, you can see it popping out the bottom here. Okay, so just keep tapping this until, whoop, that happens. That's exactly what you want to do. Alright, so after you go and find that pen that's now in the grass, because we're working outside, remember, take off this lever. Now this is that black spacer we were talking about earlier, so you just put your finger inside the pole and push it out with your other hand, catch it, otherwise you'll search in the grass for that one too, and then slide this one off. Now this is if you are completely removing, I'm just going to get that pin, completely changing the entire clamp housing. Now that's not always necessary. Often, as we mentioned earlier, it's just this bit of black plastic you're replacing. So if that's the case, you leave this on.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just slide this back on. Now it's a snug fit. So it didn't shrink. It is the right size should you have taken it off and want to put it back on again. So you just slide that on. Looks like so. So this is a great point that Shenae pointed out earlier. Some of the Silky Pole Saws will still show you a bit of metal. So don't sort of go, oh, I've done it wrong, it needs to go down further or it needs to go higher. Sometimes there will be a bit of the aluminium pole that you still see. The big thing is as long as the spacer fits, so the Hayate spacer, the bit that goes into the pole nearly takes up the whole length of it, but some of the others, it's about 3/4 of the way up. So don't stress, as long as it fits in, that's all we're interested in. So you want to slide this back in. Now, it's a flat side on one side and the bitty sticky out bit on the other side. So the sticky out bit goes inside. That's the technical term. So it's very flat when you put it on. So if you try and put it in and it's sticking out like that,
you've done it wrong.
Yeah. So turn it around, and then the other thing is, as I mentioned, this pretty much takes up the whole flat surface area, but pretty much, not completely. So if you try and put it in the wrong way, again, it's not going to sit flat. It's going to stick out at the top. So that's a good telltale that you need to turn it around, stick it in till it's completely flat. So while you're holding that with your other finger, get your lever. Now, if you're a bit OCD like me, you want to look at your pole saw and see which direction the lever's going on, because it will go on either direction. So if you want to put it that way, it will, but then that will just annoy you forever if you need. So make sure you know which way your lever goes. Doesn't really matter for functionality, but you know, that's the way it goes. Alright, so hold your lever here, put your pin back in the top, and then
so you just have to wriggle the lever around a little bit just to line it up correctly.
Now we'll do a close-up of this one. So the pin itself has a little bit of wobbly stuff in the middle. I don't know. There's a bit of a
grip, grippy feeling.
Grippy feeling. So that's what holds it in place. So it fairly easily slides until that point, and then it will stop. So then you get your trusty old hammer, gently tap it in until it's flat. So you can see a teeny bit of silver there, teeny bit at the top. You're good to go.
And then just open up your lever, make sure it's sliding okay, and everything's okay.
Yeah, so now you've replaced that, and again we put it back together. So we open the lever, point it to the ground, and then slide our other poles back inside it.
Yes.
It's all good.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Taking out my corners.
And then
Don't forget to press the button in.
Slide it in.
And it's completely back together.
So quick and easy, nice and simple.
Yes.
And so yeah, if you ever find that your levers here aren't clicking and tight, aren't like they used to, you don't need to buy a whole new clamp housing. No. Again, it's that tiny little black spacer that sits in between.
Yes.
So
yeah. So good idea to maintain your equipment, of any equipment, but obviously your Silkies as well. It just means you'll get to keep them for decades and absolutely love the experience of using them.
Yes. So, next point, how to change the spring inside your pole saw.
That holds that button in place.
So you've pulled the pole extension that you want to replace the spring. We aren't going to do a whole new video on how to do it. We've already made a video on it. People say we talk too much, so we're kind of keeping it real short and sweet.
But in the description thing under the YouTube video, Shenae will put the link so you can find that link to actually seeing us do this.
Yes, 100%. And right towards the end, I'll share a link as well for you to click and watch the video straight after this one.
Didn't even know you could do that.
So yeah, so we've got a few bits and pieces. So with replacing the spring, there's 3 parts to it. So you've got the actual spring that looks like this. Mm-hmm. You have your stopper button. This is your little tiny stopper button. This is what you press down to extend and collapse your pole saw. So that just sits right on top of this. And your little tiny baby screw that I have in my hand that you may not be able to see is kind of what holds the spring and the pole saw together. And that will allow it to bounce like so. So yeah, I'll make sure that video is up and running when you're ready to finish this one.
That's right.
So, and we also have a special tool as well that we have made to help you to extend, no, not to extend, to help you to pull out that spring. So you just slip it right in here. It makes it a little bit more easier to push in and pull back out. Yeah.
Alternatively, you can get creative and make something like that yourself at home, but basically you just want a piece of wire to remove the old spring, and then that just helps holding this one steady in place, because I think it's getting that screw in is probably the hardest part of this job.
Yes, it is.
Again, not an expensive thing to do, but really makes a big difference on the life and how good your pole saw works.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, we hope you found this video helpful. This anything that we may have possibly missed, please let us know. We can help you in the comments, or we'll make another video. But otherwise, you have a fantastic day or evening, whatever it is, and we'll see you next time.
Please subscribe and like our video, and if you, like Anita said, have any comments, please let us know.
Thanks. Bye.
We're pulling things apart and putting them back together.
Mm-hmm.
Password section.
What did I do wrong?
I'm so glad you're doing this. But you have to explain to them how you got it on.
Nerves. Nerves make you not do things. It's really quite simple.
That guy.
I'm like, how did this all of a sudden get smaller? I just took it off. Of course it fits. How is this possible? I even purposefully held it the right way. Never doubt yourself. Okay. So, you just slide this back on. Now, it's a snug fit. So, it didn't shrink. It is the right size should you have taken it off and want to put it back on again. So, you just slide that on. Looks like so. Alright.
I don't know how I'm standing. No.
I was totally it. That was just the most natural pose ever. This is how we do it.
Bye-bye, ladies.